What's going on, drivers? Today I'm going to be showing you how to install my adjustable suspension kit for the SCX24, more specifically the big country toy style trucks. In this video I'm going to be using the Chevy 2500 body, however you still can use the F250 as long as you're using the correct link kit. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Alright, so first things first, you'll see we can start off with the chassis slightly assembled with our sliders on there. One thing you'll notice is our drive shafts, and in the rear we have a female drive shaft. Now, what's important to note is that you'll be using two female drive shafts in the rear. This is just basically a full set of Gladiator drive shafts and taking both females for the rear. So you'll have the short and the long end attached to the motor and the drive shaft. You see here we've got the sliders again, like I said, already attached to our skid plate. They bolt on just like a normal pair of sliders, so I figured I could go ahead and start with those already on. And here we have our chassis rail extension, which simply just slides between our factory rails. If you're bolting it up to the Chevy body, you're going to want to use these two holes here, and if you're using the F250 body, you'll end up using these two holes here. To install it again, we're just going to slide it between our two rails, lining up the holes that we want to use, and then bolting them together using our factory style hardware. Now this next step you could ignore, but I figured I'd show it just in case anybody's curious on what I did here. I'm using the magnets in the rear to power my rock lights. Now taking our front servo mount, we can again line the holes up to our chassis rail and slide it between the rails and just bolt it on using our factory style hardware. You're going to be seeing that the 90-degree section goes more towards the front as the slightly notched section goes towards the middle. And just like that, the main chassis is pretty much already assembled. Grabbing our shocks, we're going to go ahead and get that pre-assembled slightly. We're going to go ahead and thread them to our servo horns with a 2mm spacer in between, and then it'll be to the inside of the servo horn like you can see here. So the beveled part is going towards the shock. And then I like to bolt it to the very bottom option of the servo horn, but again, once you get everything assembled, you can kind of adjust this however you like. You're going to want to go ahead and do this to all 4 shocks. Moving right along to our links, you'll notice these front uppers have little indicating arrows to help you know which direction is forward facing. Then all of our links are going to bolt up to the truck just like any set of links. You may or may not need to do this depending on the type of link mount that you're using, but I'm using a 3D printed one, and I just needed to use a couple spacers again on the rear upper links. For the drive shaft extension, you're simply going to take the extension piece and slide it between one of the drive shafts, then make sure they're in phase and slide it into the other drive shaft. Once again, just like normal, you'll simply bolt that to your axle on the other end. Now I started to get excited here and began to put my wheels on. However, don't do this yet because as you can tell, we don't have our rear shocks yet assembled to the axle. So make sure that you have your rear shocks attached to your axle before putting your wheels on. I'm going to be placing my receiver here on my chassis, so I'm going to go ahead and take this time to add some Velcro and mount that up. Now we can go ahead and feed our servos through the front servo mount. On this first servo that I'm putting through, I'm actually making a mistake by putting the gear side towards the center of the vehicle. You'll actually want the gear side going away from the vehicle, so it's more towards the front. You'll see how I do it correctly using the driver's side servo, and later on in the video, I'll catch this and end up correcting it. You will want to make sure that these servo wires go up and over the servos once you get them mounted in. That way the servos can butt up to each other flush. And then you can go ahead and bolt your servos to the front servo mount, just as if you were installing a normal servo. Here you can see me trying to fish the wire up and over the servos before mounting in our second servo, and then you can see that they'll sit into each other nice and flush. But once again, we'll go ahead and make sure that we actually correct the orientation of the servo, so you'll want to make sure that those gears are actually on the front side just like the driver's side. The next thing you'll need for this build is a servo signal reverser, as you can see here, attached to the rear passenger side. This will go to the rear passenger and the front passenger. I went ahead and wanted all my wires to be nice and tidy, so I cut mine and resoldered them together. However, they'll come where you can just plug them in as a buffer. This is also where I noticed that my front passenger servo was actually installed incorrectly, and went ahead and took it out and reinstalled it with the gears going towards the front. Again, making sure that that wire comes up and over the servo so you can actually get it to sit flush against both servos. Next, we're going to go ahead and wire up all of our connectors to our receivers, starting with our front steering servo. This will go ahead and plug into channel 1 of our receiver, as our ESC will then take up channel 2 of our receiver. Then I'm going to plug in the rear driver side servo into channel 3. And then I'm going to plug in the front passenger servo into channel 4, and the front driver servo into channel 5, and our rear passenger servo into channel 6. And then I'm going to go ahead and show you later on the remote as to how I have this all programmed up. However, if you want to put them into different slots and then program to your liking, go ahead and do so. I already have my controller pre-programmed for all of these slots, which is why I'm going with this orientation on my servos to my receiver. But from here, what you're going to need to do is then power everything on. That way you can make sure that you put your servo horns onto your servos at the center point of your liking, just as you would for your steering servo. And then of course, you're going to want to go ahead and test to make sure that the servos are acting properly and moving in the correct way that you want them to. Now, the one drawback about these specific servo signal reversers that I have is, for whatever reason, there's a delay on whenever you turn it on. So you have to wait about a minute and a half or so until they actually spark the signal to the servos, or you can unplug them and plug them back in after power is turned on, and then they'll connect immediately. So you may want to search around for potentially a different set of signal reversers, but I will still have these ones linked in the description below. That is just kind of one weird thing I wanted to know about this specific product. While I wait for mine to catch signal, it's a perfect time to go ahead and screw on your servo horns to the actual servo, just to make sure that they don't accidentally pop off later down the line. And then again, go ahead and test to make sure that all the servos are working together correctly how you want it. I'll go ahead and now show you how I have mine programmed into my controller. Going to channel 3, you can see I have it assigned to a switch and switch 3. This is the little slide switch on the side of my controller. To channel 4, I have this set to knob VR2. And this is like a rear steer almost kind of controlling knob, also on the side of the controller. Then, just like the other ones, channel 5 is on the knob to VR2. And channel 6 is on the switch 3. Now go ahead and clean up all your wires with some zip ties. Up your install, you're going to want to add your Velcro to the front mount and glue in the magnets to the rear of the mount. Then, just to show you kind of what I was talking about earlier, here's me soldering on some wires to my rear magnets. And this is again so that whenever I connect my Big Country Toys body to the magnets itself, it'll actually already complete the signal and turn the rock lights on. One important thing to note is, in order to fit the body over the rear of the chassis and servos, you'll actually need to cut out a section of the body using a Dremel or some sort of tool of your liking. From there, you can go ahead and simply glue in this drop bed cover, and that way it'll cover up the servos if you don't want to see them. And there you have it. That's how you assemble the Big Country Toys Any Level Style Lift Kit. And if you guys have any questions, go ahead and make sure you leave them down in the comments below. I'll go ahead and add all the products that I can in the description that are important for this install. And thank you guys for watching.